Hello, and thank you for joining us to learn about QuoteWerks Document Rights. QuoteWerks provides a wide array of security settings, and some of them are specifically designed for controlling access to documents with individual user permissions or group permissions. Today, we'll discuss these various security settings along with user groups while demonstrating a practical real-life scenario involving 4 hypothetical users. Before we can look at assigning permissions, we need to understand where users and groups come from. So let's take a look at user maintenance under the Utilities menu. Here we can create, edit, or delete users, groups, and approval profiles. We'll be focusing on users and groups. Here on the Users tab, we can work with individual users. On the Groups tab, we can create new groups that users can be assigned to. Let's take a look at the permissions for Jane Doe. We can do that by selecting her user account and clicking the Edit button. An individual user has many different settings, but we'll be focusing on the Documents tab. On this tab, we can designate which users and groups will have permission to interact with Jane's documents. We can give other users permission to view Jane's quotes, to modify Jane's quotes, to delete Jane's quotes, and even to prepare new quotes under Jane's name. Let's consider a small hypothetical sales operation with 4 people involved. Salesperson number 1, salesperson number 2, the accounting person, and the manager. What sort of document rights would make sense for this group based on their business needs? Let's say all of the salespeople should at least be able to view the quotes of other salespeople. And let's say we want them to be able to prepare quotes for each other also. The accounting person certainly needs to view quotes, but she might need to modify them too. The manager should obviously be allowed to see, modify, delete, or even prepare the salespeople's quotes. Keep in mind that the salespeople create the quotes, so it's their document access rights that we'll be configuring to control how others can interact with their documents. For each salesperson, we'll need to ensure that his or her quotes can be viewed or prepared by other salespeople, viewed or modified by the accounting person, and viewed, modified, deleted, or prepared by the manager. So how can we set all of this up? Let's go back to the user list. We already have the user accounts for our 4 hypothetical employees. Let's start with the document rights for salesperson 1. Again, we'll access those rights by selecting the user, clicking the Edit button, and then choosing the Documents tab. Our most direct option is to set all of the individual user rights exactly as we have just described. It sounds like everyone should be able to at least view quotes from salesperson 1, so let's set those rights first. We can update the view rights by clicking the Change button. From here, we can give each user permission to view quotes created by salesperson 1. We'll grant permission to salesperson 2, the accounting person, and the manager by checking the appropriate checkboxes, and we'll save those changes by clicking OK. Notice that after we click OK, we now see the list of users under the View Permissions. Next, let's think about who can modify this user's documents. Under our hypothetical scenario, the accounting person needed to be able to modify documents, and obviously the manager needs to be able to modify them also. We'll save those changes by clicking OK, and now both the accounting person and the manager have permission to modify salesperson 1's quotes. Next, we'll look at the delete permissions. The manager is the only person that should have the ability to delete this user's documents. And finally, we'll set permissions to prepare documents for this user. We said other salespeople should be able to prepare quotes for this user, and the manager can also prepare quotes for this user. Now we have all of the correct permissions set for how other users can work with this user's documents. Clicking on the OK button will save the changes to this user's permissions. Continuing with this same technique, we could edit salesperson 2 and set up the same permissions. We would essentially list all of the same permissions, except this time we would include salesperson 1 wherever we used salesperson 2 last time. If we had more salespeople, we could continue to do this for each of them. For our small hypothetical staff of 4, this approach works quite well, but if we had a larger organization with a lot more people, we might want to use a different approach. QuoteWerks provides several more advanced features to simplify permissions for a larger organization. One of those features is user groups. We can create a new group by clicking the Create New Group button and give it any name we'd like. Consider a group for salespeople called Salespeople. A group can be given permissions just like a user. Then all users that are in the group will automatically inherit those permissions. While we're in here, let's create groups for our other two kinds of users, and then we'll look more at how we can leverage these groups. We'll create a group for accounting people and a group for managers. Now let's go back and reconsider permissions for salesperson 1. Thinking about the view permissions first, we said we wanted everyone to have permissions to view this user's quotes, including all of the salespeople, the accounting people, and the managers, however many of them there may be. If we look closely, we can see some new choices at the top of the list that look a little different than the rest. These items wrapped in less than greater than symbols are our new groups, and we can select them just like individual users. We can remove the individual users now because they'll eventually be included in the groups. So now, if and when we hire more salespeople, we won't need to come back and update permissions for salesperson 1. We'll just add the new salespeople to the salespeople group, and wherever salespeople are supposed to have permissions, the new people will inherit those permissions. Let's make the same changes to the other permissions. We'll update modify, and we'll give permission to accounting people and managers. Then we'll update delete permissions and give permissions to only managers. Finally, we'll update prepare permissions, and we'll give permissions to the managers and the other salespeople. Now all of our permissions are based on user groups. We could think of users and groups as being analogous to people and job roles. As people move in and out of roles, we can quickly move the users in and out of groups, and all relevant permissions will be effectively updated. Now let's take a moment to add our user to the appropriate groups. We add a user to groups on the Group Membership tab. We're working with salesperson 1, who is not an accounting person or a manager, but is a salesperson. Adding a user to a group is as simple as checking the box. Note that a user can be a member of as many groups as necessary. We'll add salesperson 2 to the salespeople group. We'll add the accounting person to the accounting people group. And we'll add the manager to the managers group. For the larger organization, this approach should simplify ongoing maintenance. But what about the initial permissions setup for the rest of the salespeople? These groups are great, but if we have 10 salespeople, we still have to add the groups to the permissions for every single user. But then again, QuoteWerks is here to help. On the Apply To tab, we can copy permissions and other security settings from this user to another user or even a group of users. Let's copy all of the document access permissions by checking the checkboxes and clicking the Select User, Group, and Copy button. Now we can designate who to copy these permissions to. Since we're dealing with a salesperson and all of the salespeople should have the same security settings, we can actually select the entire group of salespeople. When prompted to confirm, be careful and make sure you're copying to the right user or group. This action will overwrite any existing permission settings and it cannot be undone. Now let's see what Salesperson 2 looks like. And it looks like Salesperson 2 is all set up for us. So now we've seen that we can configure document access rights for a modest number of users or leverage user groups to configure a large number of users. We can also copy security settings to rapidly configure everyone in the organization. Whatever our scenario, we have all the tools that we need to effectively and efficiently manage both simple and complex rules for document access. Thank you for joining us to learn more about QuoteWerks and its powerful security features.